Good morning, it's Ayya Vimala, and it's a beautiful Thursday morning, June the 4th. I hope you don't hear too much noise in the background. It's good to be here with you, and the world is still turning round and round, and it's crazy, and we are living in this is like an experiential class of here is samsara. Here is the world that we choose to keep coming back to over and over again. So let's learn everything we need to learn from this world and learn it deeply and wisely and thoroughly, and then use that wisdom to get out of it, to learn how to get out of it. So we just need to finish wanting to come back. So some of us are going to learn that finally, I think, this lifetime, right? We're going to have that opportunity. I hope I don't want to be negative at all. I think that's one of the best outcomes from everything we're going through. The confusion and the fear and the anxiety, and how we've all had to change plans. Yesterday, my daughter was reading something in the news, and it said that I think it's the largest theater company, movie theater company, maybe in the world, AMC, that they may not survive economically. So and I thought, wow, think about that. It's a huge country and it's a worldwide company. That should make you recession proof, or that should make you be safe, right? Because if one country's things fall apart, then they don't fall apart other places. Well, guess what? With this pandemic has hit the entire world, and it's coming back in most of those parts of the world with increased numbers of people becoming sick. So the giants cannot make it very often in a situation like this, and that's when we should feel very good about just being our individual human beings. Hi, Kim. Sorry, I see Kim Zoff's name, and I wanted to tell her how happy I am to see her name. Sometimes being just a little human being gives us some safety, doesn't it? So if we're big, if we're a giant, if we depend on the whole world supporting us, then it might be easier. It's a David and Goliath situation. So all of us are the Davids, and the huge corporations, some of the ones that we thought would be immune to this, don't have the immunity that us little Davids have. So we can feel good about that, unless you work for one of the Goliaths, and you might be rethinking your career. But every day there's something new to learn. Every day there's some new awareness that we need to be. Right now we need to be all exploring as deeply as we can within us, where we have where there's racism, where there is a lack of integrity, and how we think we are, and what we really understand in so many different areas. If we find that there's a lack of integrity between our actions and the way we think, this is a good time for us all to be very seriously looking at that. That's part of that. In words that sound not as much fun, but when we talk about purification of our minds, that's what the Buddha was teaching us to do all the time, is to purify our minds. And I think a lot of that is having that alignment that's perfectly balanced and perfectly lined up, so we don't have chinks. We don't have those chinks in our life that cause us, we're thinking one way, we're behaving another, we're one way in public, we're another way in private. When we live like that, we end up not telling the truth, not being kind and telling the truth at the same time. We end up with a lot of turmoil, I think, inside, and it's not a good place to be when we're in isolation, right? So I think everything happening in the world today is giving us a chance to look at our lives and to start getting things in line, align everything, and it will only get better. But like we see in our country, if you don't have strong, noble, honorable leadership at the top, you can't get everything aligned. You know, you're not going to have things aligned correctly. And so when we're looking at our minds, we have to be sure that that mind is coming from the highest place, and then let everything become aligned with that. Look at the examples we're seeing in politics and in this country. Our systems don't work when there is not integrity at the very top. And when there's no integrity there, it starts filtering down to everything below it. The lack of integrity, the lack of sincerity and honesty and truth, and doing the jobs we do for the right reasons and not the wrong reasons, and transparency in our organizations. We've got so many lessons. I think we could just go on and on thinking of the lessons that we are learning. If we're keeping our eyes open and we're keeping our hearts and minds open, we've got everything to learn from this situation. And we will come out of it better. Our children will be wiser. You know, it's actually wonderful to see young people being involved in the peaceful protest, because I think it's been very discouraging to be a young person. And I was a young person during the Vietnam War, and there were the protest and the marches and everything that was done. We often felt like it had no effect, but I think it instilled in us the need to be out there. It instilled in us the need to vote and to keep going even when it seemed impossible. And I think that that's what we need to keep instilling in the young people in this country. I know Bernie Sanders running for president the first time inspired lots and lots of young people, and motivated them to again take interest in voting and public life. And even though Bernie ran and he's still standing up for everything that he's been talking about his entire career, he's still out there, and he's still commandeering a lot of respect from the same people who have been following him and listening to him for many years. So we need those people. We need those people in our society, and at times it may appear like nobody's listening to them, but the young people are. And those of us, a lot of us older people are too. And we need to be able to turn the torch over to the younger generations. So those are good things we're seeing, and some of the problems and the rights they're trying to the rights and the freedoms that they see being taken away from people, and that have been taken away from entire parts of our country since it first existed and before then. I think they're waking up to that if they weren't already. So my admiration goes out to everyone who's protesting peacefully, and I know the people who really care are not the ones who are looting. So we're dealing with things that are really important for us to try to step back. If we're not actively involved, step back and really learn about what's going on. And I see people on Facebook recommending really positive things to listen to or to read, and that makes my heart just feel so good. And I think there's a lot to compile and a lot to think about. So instead of going back to being negative about how politics are so messed up, and I'm seeing people starting to put out all this wonderful stuff to learn, and we have systems that are never going to work, and so we have to just like we do in meditation, how we investigate when there's something that comes, a problem that we see when we're sitting in meditation, and we recognize it, we accept it, and then we investigate it. And I often talk about that investigation is not up in our heads. It's looking at that issue after we've owned it and acknowledge it, and it's our issue too. That we begin to look at it from all different sides, just like I always imagine a giant jewel, a multifaceted jewel, and we're walking around it, and we're just trying to see from every one of the facets of that jewel to look and see what that jewel looks like. So walking around it, taking it in, and seeing how every different facet on that jewel is like a different aspect that we may not have seen. And just taking that all in. And then when we need to, we come back to, we back away from the problem, and we just take all that in and let it explore it a different way than just with our linear thinking. And then we let it go, and then we may come back to it a million times, but we come back to that safe place. So I think what's going on in our society right now, including the pandemic, and now we're just sweeping in the whole kettle of fish, and we're taking in the horrific things that we're waking up to once again in our society. And so the protests are going on, and that includes, we're seeing more bad behavior from the people who should be protecting and serving, and that goes all the way to the top of the leadership of the country and our government. But we can look at all these things the same way as rain, right? Recognition, acknowledgement, and acceptance, and then that investigation, and then we don't get caught up in that and lost in that. We come back to a safe place, a nurturing place, a neutral place, and then let that exploration continue whenever we can take that time to look at it that way. So we're seeing that some systems in this country are completely broken, and we can't keep saying, let's retrain people, and let's do this and let's do that, and we spend billions of dollars trying to upgrade equipment and using more cameras and body cams, and training's gone on as long as I've been was in graduate school. There was sensitivity training, and wow, I could write a whole list of all the when I was, my graduate degree was in public administration, and it was in education, adult education, and it was all things like, we'll teach people in government sensitivity training, and all the different therapies that I can't, aren't even popping into my head. And there was lots of money in the government to pay for things like that. So that was a whole other lifetime ago. But we keep doing that. Our Band-Aid, we have, sometimes when there's lots of money, we have lots of big, beautiful Band-Aids to put on the problem. And other times when there's not, the programs are cut back. And then, the next time we have money to spend on those kind of programs. It'll be something totally different and a new approach. So this goes on forever. And what we have to do is look, if the system's really broken, we have to keep walking around that jewel. There are going to be some facets. There are ways to change us as opposed to changing the system. And that could be ways of learning how to deal with the system differently. I mean, we don't even know what needs to be changed, but we can't keep throwing Band-Aids on the same old problem. It's not working. So we may have to know how to take the system back into our own hands and work on changing something else. Because when a system is so broken, there's a lot of danger. It becomes a real gold mine for someone who wants to come in and destroy the system. So it all comes back to us personally, really examining this situation. And I think we have to acknowledge that it's our situation. We have to accept that it is our personal situation, in the sense that we need to be as wise and insightful as we can be, and as calm as we can be, and not get lost in anger or fear, not try to bypass the problem because we want to say, well, I'm detached from that. I'm not of this world. I don't have to deal with it. I think this is a time when we have to say, I am part of the world, and I can't change everything because this is samsara. So this world is not going to change and become that Garden of Eden. But I can change. I can transform myself as much as possible into a caring, kind, wise, insightful human being. And when I do offer something, even if it's to my tiny little world, it might be just in the scope of my daily activities. If I can offer something to that tiny little world, that's beautiful, that's wonderful. And then that expands. We're never aware of how much it expands. But if we're putting negative out, it expands. And if we're putting wholesome, beautiful thoughts and actions and kindness, if we're putting that out, we have no idea how powerful it is. Once in a while we have a glimpse of that, but usually we get frustrated, we're sad, we become hopeless, but we can't hide behind our spiritual practice either. I think we have to have it more and more as we live in a world that we feel like everything's falling apart, but we can't hide behind it because we are living in this world. We are teaching people, whether we know it or not, we're teaching people by everything we do, everything we say. So do what you can, and do it wisely and do it with love. Just let go of anger. Let's just try to get rid of our anger and do everything we do from love and not from fear and not from anger. Okay, let's sit. Let's see how much time. I have no idea about the time. Well, okay. I will assume we have a little bit of time, so if you have to, I don't have my timepiece with me, and if I touch my phone where I'm recording, I'm afraid I'll lose the connection. So let's sit, and if you have to leave, if you plan to sit with me for 30 minutes and I've almost reached that time, then leave when you need to. But let's sit and have a wonderful day, have a safe day, And tomorrow I'd like to share a few questions that people have asked me, and maybe I can share some of the resources that I'm encountering over the last few days, and you can too. Okay, so remember to try to keep a smile on your face. Just feel a smile on your face when you meditate, because I really think it does help keep a more uplifted feeling. So just play with the smile on your face, okay? So find a relaxed position on your back, on the floor, in a chair, but let your spine feel uplifted, feel awake, then begin to relax all over your body. Don't hold that tightness don't feel stiff. So get into that posture. And think of that alignment that we need between our head and our heart and the rest of our physical body. And just feel your body aligning. And feel your mind aligning with everything else, with your speech, with your action, with your emotions. We all have those moments when we feel like everything lines up. Remember, right resolve, renunciation, letting go of the things that we don't need, that aren't helping us. Loving kindness. And no harm. So that feeling that we will do no harm to any living being. So with that right resolve, we can make it through any day and feel good about ourselves at the end of that day. Get in touch with your breath, with each breath in through your nose. Feel your belly rise, and with your exhale, feel it contract. Let your shoulders relax. Breathe in loving kindness, and let go of any anger, any hatred you feel. let your mind and your heart and your body relax. Recognize yourself, recognize the things that are hurting you, harming you, causing you to be anxious or fearful. And accept those things because you feel strong enough to work with them. Don't be afraid of them. Don't be afraid of acknowledging your fear. Welcome it in so you can comfort it, take care of it, and then let it go on its way. May we all recognize today that everything we do is done for the benefit or the hindrance of all living beings. So may everything we do today be done for the benefit of all living beings. Have a wonderful day and be safe. Be filled with love. Thank you so much for being with me. Bye-bye. See you tomorrow.